The war in Ukraine has taken a dramatic turn. President Zelensky delivered a forceful address framing the conflict as a fight for global security and democracy, not just territory. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has stunned observers by reversing his stance on Ukraine, now supporting a full Ukrainian victory. This shift comes as mysterious explosions rock Russian territory, raising questions about Russia's internal stability. These events are deeply intertwined, marking a pivotal moment in the conflict and forcing the world to reconsider its next moves. The stakes have never been higher, and the decisions made now could reshape the future of Europe and the global order. For months, former President Donald Trump's open skepticism about providing continued support to Ukraine has deeply unsettled officials in Kyiv and sent ripples of concern through the country's allies across Europe and beyond. His public statements questioning the value of U.S. involvement in the conflict and his unpredictable approach to foreign policy have left many wondering about the future of Western backing for Ukraine's struggle against Russian aggression. This uncertainty has fueled persistent fears that American aid, so crucial to Ukraine's defense, could soon diminish or even disappear, leaving Ukraine vulnerable and its people anxious about what lies ahead. At one point, Trump even suggested that Ukraine might have to consider ceding some of its territory in exchange for peace, a statement that cast serious doubt on America's long-term commitment and sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. However, following a private and reportedly candid meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Trump has made a dramatic reversal. He now insists that Ukraine not only can, but should reclaim all of its internationally recognized territory, signaling a newfound resolve to support Ukraine's sovereignty. In a further shift, Trump has publicly described Russia's military as a paper tiger, downplaying its strength, and is now urging NATO and European nations to step up their support for Ukraine, calling for a more robust and coordinated response to Russian aggression. This unexpected pivot brings Trump's position much closer to that of mainstream Western leaders, creating the appearance of a more unified and determined front among Ukraine's key supporters. Political analysts and commentators are now actively debating whether this represents a genuine change of heart on Trump's part, or if it's a calculated political maneuver designed to appeal to voters and allies ahead of upcoming elections. Regardless of the motivation behind this shift, Trump's new stance is sending a powerful message to both friends and foes alike. U.S. support for Ukraine may prove to be more steadfast and enduring than many had previously anticipated, offering hope to Ukrainians and reassurance to allies. As the world watches closely, the big question now is whether this surprising change in rhetoric will actually translate into concrete action and lasting policy, or if it will remain just words on the international stage. Zelensky quickly welcomed Trump's new position, expressing optimism and gratitude for what he described as a significant shift in international support. For Ukraine, this move signals not just a political endorsement, but a renewed sense of hope that their struggle is being recognized on the world stage. He called it a major diplomatic win and a powerful validation of Ukraine's stance, emphasizing that such backing could help rally more countries to their cause. Ukrainian officials, buoyed by the news, celebrated the development as a turning point that could potentially alter the course of the conflict. Across Europe, leaders breathed a collective sigh of relief. Many see Trump's tougher line as a much-needed boost to NATO unity, strengthening the alliance's resolve to stand firm against Russian aggression. This renewed commitment is seen as essential for maintaining stability and security across the continent. Eastern NATO members like Poland echoed his call for a harder stance, viewing Russian provocations as direct threats to their own sovereignty and security. For these countries, a firmer Western response is not just about Ukraine, but about safeguarding the entire region from further escalation. But not everyone is on board with this new direction. Some leaders and diplomats remain wary, concerned about the risks of further escalation and the potential fallout for their own nations. Leaders like Brazil's President Lula continue to push for an immediate ceasefire and renewed negotiations, arguing that dialogue is the only path to lasting peace. They warn that military solutions alone could deepen divisions and prolong suffering. This split highlights a growing global divide. While the West largely backs a military victory for Ukraine, much of the global South urges compromise and diplomatic engagement. The differing approaches underscore the complexity of building a unified international response. Many worry that a prolonged war could destabilize economies, disrupt global supply chains, and worsen existing crises like inflation and food shortages. The economic ripple effects are already being felt far beyond the battlefield. Trump's dramatic U-turn has energized the West and injected new momentum into diplomatic efforts, but it hasn't bridged the wider gap in global perspectives. The world remains deeply divided on the best path forward. As leaders continue to debate and negotiate, the world watches anxiously, hoping for a breakthrough that can finally bring an end to the conflict and restore peace to the region. The Kremlin has responded to Trump's sudden reversal with characteristic defiance, dismissing his statements as deeply mistaken, and openly mocking what they see as his inconsistency and unpredictability. Russian officials, standing firm at a late-night press conference, projected an image of unity and control, determined to show the world that Moscow will not be swayed by foreign rhetoric or shifting Western opinions. Officially, Russia continues to insist that its so-called special military operation in Ukraine is proceeding according to plan, with government spokespeople touting the strength and discipline of their armed forces. Yet beneath the surface, internal pressures are mounting. Across Russian cities, anxiety is growing as more citizens question the cost and direction of the war. Recent explosions at military sites deep inside Russia, widely believed to be the result of Ukrainian sabotage, have shattered the illusion that the conflict is a distant problem, confined to the front lines. These attacks have exposed significant vulnerabilities in Russia's defenses, raising concerns about the government's ability to protect its own territory. For ordinary Russians, the war is no longer an abstract event. The violence and uncertainty are now part of daily life, bringing fear and frustration to the streets of Moscow and beyond. On the economic front, Russian leaders continue to insist that Western sanctions are having little effect, claiming the nation's economy is resilient and self-sufficient. However, independent analysts paint a different picture, warning that the combination of war expenses and international sanctions is slowly strangling Russia's economy, leading to inflation, business closures, and a declining standard of living. On the battlefield, Russia's advances have largely stalled. Despite months of fighting, progress has been minimal, with many units bogged down and unable to break through Ukrainian defenses. In the Donbas region, Russian forces have managed only minor territorial gains, while casualties continue to mount on both sides, fueling further discontent at home. The label of paper tiger is gaining traction, as critics and even some supporters question the effectiveness of Russia's military might and the wisdom of its current strategy. Despite massive mobilization efforts, Russia is struggling to achieve meaningful breakthroughs. The military's stagnation, combined with economic hardship and growing public dissatisfaction, is putting unprecedented strain on the Kremlin's authority. Internal unrest is becoming harder to ignore, as protests and demonstrations break out in major cities, and the government faces increasing criticism from both the public and political elites. With mounting military, economic, and social challenges, Russia now faces growing crises on all fronts, testing the Kremlin's resolve and raising questions about the country's future direction. Zelensky has become Ukraine's chief diplomat, tirelessly rallying international support and framing the war as a global fight. He's used global platforms to warn that unchecked Russian aggression threatens all of Europe. His meeting with Trump appears to have influenced the former president's dramatic shift. Zelensky is also engaging leaders from the global south, seeking to broaden Ukraine's coalition. Beyond immediate aid, Ukraine is pushing for long-term security guarantees from the US and key allies. A formal security pact would deter future Russian aggression and anchor Ukraine in the Western security system. Ukraine's diplomatic push is as vital as its military resistance. The Ukraine war has forced NATO into its most active role since the Cold War, coordinating Western support and rethinking strategy. Trump's call for a tougher NATO stance, including shooting down Russian aircraft violating member airspace, has found support among Eastern allies. Incidents like Russian drone debris in Romania highlight the risk of escalation and accidental conflict. Russia's destabilizing actions, including election meddling in Moldova, show the threat extends beyond Ukraine. NATO members are ramping up defense spending, but internal divisions remain over energy ties to Russia. The alliance must balance robust support for Ukraine with the risk of direct war with a nuclear-armed Russia. Every border incident is a potential flashpoint. Europe's security is more fragile than ever. As the conflict drags on, uncertainty clouds the future for Ukraine, Russia, and the world. Zelensky's rhetoric, Trump's pivot, and explosions inside Russia have added new complexity to the crisis. Ukraine's fate hinges on the political will of its allies, which can shift with domestic politics. The world is split. Some demand a decisive Ukrainian victory, others urge immediate negotiations to avoid catastrophe. Each path carries immense risks. Prolonged war could escalate, but a rushed peace might legitimize aggression. The outcome depends on battlefield developments, diplomatic endurance, and unpredictable leaders. The only certainty is that this war will shape the world for years to come. The crossroads of war and peace has never been more stark.